congratulations on this well-deserved reward. I was wondering, at the end of session 2, you were talking about impact, and that as researchers and graduate students and new faculty members, we don't want to get caught up being in our offices and thinking sort of in the proverbial ivory tower. And I wondered if you could extend on how we can take our research and make sure that it makes an impact into the schools, into teachers' lives, and ultimately on students of today, and how that can work. And from your experience, what the best way to make that happen is. Thanks.
It's a very good question. I spent most of my career believing I could make research bridge over from the research community to the teaching community or to influence policy. I'm much less sure of that now. I think in the policy arena, we know that research rarely affects policy by itself, that if you're lucky, your research gets into the hands of an advocate who will use it to clobber the opposition. So your research might get used by ideologues, and that's okay if it gets used, but the research itself doesn't change people. It takes somebody promoting it. As far as influencing teachers, I mean, if you pick topics that you think can change the way they think about motivating students or teaching literacy or doing two-column addition and regrouping, whatever, then the question is, what happens after you publish your paper? And there's been a huge gap for 100 years in educational psychology and educational research as we publish our papers and teachers don't read the journals. Those are different worlds we live in. And William James said 107 or 8 years ago now, 110 years ago now, it will always take an intermediate inventive mind to go from the research to the world of practice. And I think that's still true. We don't have the equivalent of people who keep an eye on the journals and figure out how to get that stuff into classrooms. We don't have mechanisms for professional development that help people do that very well. A little place here, a little place there, but as a profession, we don't do that very well. And it seems to me that one of the weak points in our joint, broad profession is that our researchers and our practice community don't work together very much. And we need that intermediate inventive minds to both funnel problems up to the researchers and to take solutions once in a while. We might actually have a useful one back to the teachers. It's a very hard thing to do.
Hi. You said that the EDIC and the EMIC forms of research can yield useful and different knowledge. And so as a teacher and as the insider and currently working on my master's for curriculum and instruction, how do you suggest that I become like an integral part of the research within my own classroom and my own school?
Well, I don't think you can avoid it. And so what you're really looking for is justification. I mean, you're in the school, you're in the classroom, and you're obviously thinking of doing something systematic in the form of an inquiry about your own teaching, about your effects on students, about the relationships among teachers at your site. You're an insider writing an insider's view. And what you need to do is read the research literature on that, doing narrative work of your own or that of your colleagues, studying kids and doing qualitative work on kids and their families. You are the consummate insider, and your voice has been lacking until the last 20 or 30 years in educational research. People wouldn't trust you as a scholar and as a person with valued knowledge. But that's all changed, thank goodness, due to some of our scholars here at ASU and around the country who understand that the source of the knowledge, and John Dewey would say this, the source of the knowledge is irrelevant. The warrants behind it are important. You have knowledge about the way that classroom runs. That is valuable to us meaning the broader community. And you have to find a way to write it and present it, and you have to find places to present it, the teacher meetings and to the faculty at your district and that sort of thing. But the EDIC or EMIC is irrelevant. There are techniques to allow you to do high-quality scholarly work as a consummate insider and to share your thoughts about that with others who will judge whether it's useful or not. Hi, Tom.
Okay, I have a question about test-based accountability. And with the new president and the new Congress, do you have any hopes that No Child Left Behind will be altered or maybe discarded?
I'm I'm very cynical thus far. The person he picked for Secretary of Education is committed to No Child Left Behind, though he says it needs modification. He's very committed to pay for performance. That means some high-stakes accountability. It would be nice if we had growth models. We might do a little better if we could actually plot growth, so we're not just measuring the social status of the kids in the school. If we had a pre-post growth or a school's growth over time, perhaps we could do better, but the psychometrics are not yet up to that. We don't have psychometric procedures for that. So I'm afraid we're stuck with some form of high-stakes accountability, some form of judgment of schools. I expect there'll be a little, you and I both remember when we had goals 2000 and we were going to be #1 in science and math in the world, and every kid was going to be safe, and so that was all set up. And when 2000 came, they said, whoops, we'll keep working on it. And I expect when 2014 comes and 92% of all schools in America are failing, they'll say, well, there's something wrong with our procedures, and we'll do something else. So I expect modifications, but I think high-stakes accountability systems with a lot of shaming and blaming and pressures on teachers and schools, I think that's going to be with us for quite some time.
Sadly. Hi there.
Hi.
I'm an 8th grade teacher, and I think I have a lot of parents that are brainwashed on high-stakes testing. So how do I get them to buy into the idea of 21st century learning skills and getting the problem solving and having them finding ways of assessing these types of skills?
I'm not sure how you can do it, but you and your colleagues and your superintendent and the district can do it if you all put your mind to it, but that means some agreement that that's worth doing. We have a lot of teachers and a lot of administrators in America. My estimate is about 30% teachers and administrators, based on work done here at ASU, some student work by Wayne Wright a couple of years ago. My guess is about 30% of teachers and 30% of administrators really like high-stakes testing and No Child Left Behind. And that means there's a strong constituency for its maintenance, and that's a problem. But the notion of 21st century skills, we're all talking about them, but what I try to do is point out that we're developing a 19th century curriculum, that we're beginning to have our schools look much more like Mr. Gradgrind's schools in Dickens than they do like anything we envision the workplace of the future will be, which is a knowledge workplace where people do collaborative work and that sort of thing. Certainly not a factory model. And what we have to do is get parents to understand that that workplace of the future is going to require different skills from their kids. The problem is every parent thinks school ought to be like they went to it. And it's very hard to get them to think of different forms of pedagogy. So it's very tough. I don't always approve of what Tom Friedman says when he talks about the world as flat. In fact, I think he's sometimes a turkey. But on this issue of a different kind of workplace and the school's preparation for it, I think he's got it right. We've got a mismatch. So you find the books like that, and you get them to the parents, and you start talking about, so what if your kid lost one item on the Ames and instead did a project with 3 other kids to see if there was pollution downtown in Phoenix that was hurting them? What would be the grand loss if you lost an item versus a collaborative research project using scientific methods to collect data and make a report to the town council in which they could learn citizenship skills, et cetera, et cetera? You know, most parents, when confronted with that choice, one lousy item or a project like I just described, they'll pick the project.
Thank you.
Good luck.
High-stakes testing seems to be the topic of the night. Can you talk a little bit about what you might view as a different process by which to measure student learning, a more valid process? Well,
student learning is measured every day by their teachers. So the first thing is ask the teacher if you want to know how the kid is doing. What we've got is incredible disrespect for teachers' pedagogical knowledge. That's just running through. We used to validate these tests on whether teachers agreed with the scores. Now we discount them and say the scores are God gave us these scores, and teachers don't count. So the first thing to do is value teachers' pedagogical knowledge and say, how's the kid doing? We have actually evidence here, Anna Perna-Ganesh and I are collecting evidence in the early grades, that teachers can predict the AIM scores, rank order the kids, look at the rank order of the classroom, the correlation is 0.9. If the correlation is 0.9, why are you spending $1 million or $2 million every year? I can get you the information in 10 minutes for 18 cents, okay? So we have to go back to figuring out how to value teachers' knowledge in our society. But it's not just student scores or information for parents. We're looking at ways to hold schools accountable. And there are other ways to do that. Other countries have inspectorates. The inspectorate's a very time-honored procedure. Lots of countries that use them have scores on international tests that are very respectable. They have people go to schools, sit in schools, do a one-week report on the schools, take the information back to the community and the leaders of the community, revise the report and say, we'll be back in a year. Tell me how you're doing. Accreditation was supposed to do that in America. It doesn't. It's only done every 10 years, and it's often an old boy, old girl network. But these inspectorates are out there to make the schools better. So that's another procedure. More use of formative assessments, another procedure. The procedure developed by Nebraska, I thought, was among the best. Superintendent Christensen didn't want to play with the No Child Left Behind methods. And he said, I'll have my teachers make end-of-course exams, and they'll all write the exams, and then they'll score the exams, and then they'll tell me what they need in training to get the kids' scores up, because if the kids don't get stuff right, that's their responsibility. So it was a system that would learn and get better all the time. And No Child Left Behind authorities, Margaret Spellings in particular, wanted to stop it. She told them she wouldn't allow it. He got it through anyway, because Nebraska is a Republican state. And he said, you wouldn't dare take away our money, and she blinked. So they put the procedure in, but then they fired him. And so now they've got something more compromised. But teachers aren't against accountability. Teachers are quite willing to give people information. But teachers need to be a part of it. The system has to be fair to them. So there are other methods. They're probably more labor intensive and more complex.
Yes.